To Reverend Joel Fotinos. Thank you, Reverend Joel, for being here today. And we'll turn things over to you.
All right, let's do it. Before I talk about what I'm going to talk about, I thought I just feel like there's a lot happening right now, suddenly again, in the world and in politics and in whatever. So I just thought it would be great for us to do the peace practice, because the more we put our peace out into the world, the better it is, right? So we'll just take a moment to do this, and if you would just take a breath and just center yourself for a moment and touch that peace that is inside of us, that peace that we know is there and is available to us, just one breath deeper. And let's just know the peace right now. So I'll say these statements and you can say them as I say them out loud. I am the peace I wish to see.
I am the peace I wish to see.
I hold the peace for my family. I hold the peace for my community. My community holds the peace for the world. Take a breath. All right, thank you. So, we're talking today about self-care in the body. Have you noticed, by the way, that when it's time for you to do something or focus on something, that thing suddenly shows up everywhere in your life? It's like, the software that they have now on computers where you do a Google search, and say you do a Google search for red sofa, and then suddenly, there are ads for red sofa, and every story comes up as red sofa, and you go to social media and it's all about red sofas. I mean, like, they have figured out that kind of way to bring it into software, but it's that way in life, I think. At least it is for me. I started noticing that recently, that everywhere I looked, I was being told about or taught about trapped emotions. Trapped emotions are emotions that we carry in our bodies. They're caused by physical trauma or distress, mental trauma or distress, emotional trauma or distress, or generational trauma or distress that we have inherited in our very DNA from our ancestors. And so I'm getting all of this all around, and it brought me right back to my body. And our theme this month is self-care, and self-care in the body is what we're talking about today. I mean, I feel like there have been years that have gone by that I would not have been the right person to talk about this, because I wasn't always in my body. I was in my mind and I was in my spirit, but I was not always focused on my body. I've been a very neck up kind of person for a lot of my life. And we know of mind, body, spirit. That's a common phrase these days. And in like the CSL movement, we talk a lot about the mind part. Obviously, it's called science of mind, after all. And we talk also a lot about the spirit part, the spiritual path. But we don't talk as much about the body part. I'm not saying we never do. I'm just saying we don't emphasize it as much. It's at least not in our particular philosophy. And in fact, if you read through the science of mind, Ernest Holmes, if you even go to the definitions in the back and the glossary in the back, and you look up the word body, this is what he says. He says, body is the outward form, the entire manifestation of spirit, both visible and invisible. It's the body of God. Within this one body of God is included all lesser bodies. And then he goes on to kind of talk about that, but nowhere really in this book, at least that I can remember, do we talk about the body. the body itself and how we can uplift the body and how we can feel our feelings and process those. It's like we bypass that a lot. So, you know, that's just the way that our movement is. But it's not just our movement. Years ago, I was working with a well-known spiritual teacher, not from our movement, but certainly somebody you would recognize, somebody who wrote a lot of best-selling books. And this teacher was talking about our soul and how our soul has all these levels, and there's all these levels of consciousness. And this person went on, and I actually was loving it. It was right up my alley. But at a certain point, I said to the teacher, so those are all levels of the mind and levels of the soul as taught by those ancient masters that you follow. But what about the body? And there was like a complete look of shock on this person's face, followed by this long pause as they tried to find the words. And I could tell by their face that they thought I was the dumbest person in the world to ask such a stupid, non-spiritual question. And then they said in a very patronizing tone, the body. I'm here talking about the soul, and you ask about the body? And then they said, why, of course, we must transcend our body and focus instead on the levels of the soul. And then just went on lecturing. But I always wondered, why have a body if we're only to transcend it while we're still alive? I mean, shouldn't we love it? I mean, the first two of the 7 chakras are all about grounding ourselves in our body. So today we're going to talk about the body as an entry point into the deeper life experience. Not just, you know, working out and eating healthy. Those are great choices. Do those things, but we're going to go deeper than that. We teach oneness, right? In our movement, that is principle number 1 is oneness. There's only one. And that one then includes our body. How could it not? How could there be anything other than the one? So our body is in fact part of the one. And if we look back at that phrase, mind, body, spirit, body is one of the big 3. Each one of those 3 things, mind, body, and spirit, each one is a gateway or a path to our greater experience. While we're here on this earth, in this plane of existence, we absolutely need all 3. Not just one or the other. A balance of all 3 is what I have found to be the way. Not that I've always experienced the way, but I've always tried to bring that to my practice. And then you can say the way to what? Well, I would say the way to wholeness, the way to balance, and the way to full connection with my divine self. So as I mentioned earlier, I found in myself and in others I know, and certainly many of the people I've worked with as a minister over the years, I found that many of us excel in 1 or 2 of those big 3, mind, body, spirit. And we can be a little overbalanced or overcompensated in that 1 or 2 things, 2 areas. And the third one is the one that's lagging. And the one that is lagging in us, whether it's mind, body, or spirit, in each one of us, the one that's lagging often holds the greatest treasures for us. So someone may be great in terms of spiritual practice, and they have a good physical practice, so they have the spirit and the body covered, but their mind might be filled with anxiety or limitations. And instead of taking the mind to really develop it and exercise it, they spend even more time in the paths of spirit, paths of spirit and body. Or it could be somebody is really kind of heavy in the body and mind area. Those are their dominant paths, and they inside though have this longing for a spiritual connection. In my case, I've always been mostly focused on my mind and my spirit. I love to study. I love to connect spiritually. You could give me a silent retreat with a stack of books by Richard Rohr and Henry Nouwen, and I will study them, and my mind and my soul will be fully engaged and fully in glee. But if you said that then I had to go to the gym, I would be something like, well, why would I have to do that? I've always kind of, that's always been the least of my three paths. And I know why. I know that being in the body has traditionally been my weakest area, the one that I focus on the least, at least. Maybe some of you can relate, or maybe your weakest area might be one of the others. So for me, suddenly, there are all these books and videos showing up for me about this one thing, trapped emotions, which, I suddenly had to pay attention to, because when something starts showing up in life, it's good to pay attention at the, hey, look at me stage, when they're just kind of whispering it, rather than avoiding it so that it has to keep getting louder and louder until it shouts, hey, look at me, because you know what I mean. That's when things get even tougher. So pay attention to things as they show up in your life. That's one of the things in the spiritual path we learn. Now, speaking about the body, about a year ago, I had a health challenge, and I dealt with it the best way I could, which was to use my mind to study about it and my spirit to get treatment for it. And that wasn't enough, as it turns out. For the first time in a long time, I had to stop and deal with the third part of my trilogy, the body. I couldn't just think it away. I had to deal with this health challenge, and it was hard. And if you've had a health challenge, it can be hard, it can be scary, it can be all the things that health challenges can be. And I did deal with it. I dealt with it. My body was calling, and I answered the call. I mean, I went into my body and I dealt with it, so much so that my doctors were amazed at the results. The moment I found out about this health challenge, I changed my diet instantly. I began drinking more water and less alcohol. I went for these long, intense walks every day. I stretched, I improved my sleeping. I even started doing fasts, which was incredible. And, I just got into it. The old hippie term is, I grokked it. Grokking means to inhabit it, to know it so deeply that it goes all the way in. I really grokked it, the whole thing. And I felt like I was in my body, and it felt like it was so apparent that I was in my body that even other people noticed it. It was really an incredible time. And just a few months after learning about this health issue, I reversed that health challenge. I was actually healthier than I had been in years, so much so that one of my doctors said, wow, I've never actually had a patient do this before, this fast and this focused. Usually people come in and they just want to get medication and not change anything else and go back to life as it was. But I knew my body was calling me to something deeper. I knew my body was saying, hey, pay attention. Pay attention to me now. Don't just numb it out. Really dive deep. And I knew that I needed my mind and my spirit and my body all to be balanced to deal with this. I couldn't just do one or the other thing. I needed all three. I need to be in my body in order to deal with it. So then, as soon as I got this medical clearance that I had reversed this, it's funny how fast things change. My mind went, oh, great. Now I can go back to focusing on my mind and my spirit. That imbalance just started to creep back in. I started to get lax again, not overnight, but I would wake up in the morning and I'd think, oh, I'm healthy now. I can forget about that morning exercise. And then slowly my portions of food started getting a little bit bigger again, and I could feel myself sliding back, and my mind knew it and my spirit knew it. But now I was wise enough to catch it quickly. And I said out loud to my subconscious, to my body, to life, I said, show me what I need to know and show me what I need to do now. That suddenly, and I mean that same day that I asked that question, that's when I started getting all this information about these emotions trapped in our body. And it showed up on my TikToks, and it showed up on the YouTubes that I was watching. And then suddenly the books that I had picked out to start reading, suddenly it was all over there. A few weeks ago, I mentioned in a talk Eckhart Tolle's work, where he calls these emotions pain bodies, the negative energy of trapped emotions that swirl inside of us, sometimes for years or decades. And we often ignore them, and we just endure that pain for years. But ignoring pain is not self-care. If you don't hear anything else that I say this morning, hear that ignoring pain is not self-care. So it was clearly up to me, and I wanted to learn more about it. So I took up my copy of Emotional Detox Now by Sherry-Anna Boyle. And it even says on the back cover, I mean, it says, by checking in with your body and allowing your emotions to fully manifest instead of brushing them aside, you will be able to process your feelings and step back into your life refreshed and empowered. Who doesn't want that? She talks about how our bodies are made up of energy, and when our energy is in balance with our mind and spirit, we can experience all of that energy working for us. Like when all of our chakras, which by the way are in and around our body, when they are all open and fully charged, they are providing energy for us. But when we have trapped emotions in our body, it affects our life in negative ways. So this book is just a series of scripts for 135 different ways that we need to pay attention to those trapped emotions that are in our body and how to release them. Then I started reading this wonderful book, Living Untethered. Some of you may have read Michael Singer's first book, The Untethered Soul, which is phenomenal. I started reading this. You can see, I mean, like every page is incredible. He talks about unresolved emotional energy that we carry inside of us. And then I got my copy of this, The Body Code by Dr. Bradley Nelson. And he puts it this way. Listen to this. He says, he calls this trapped energy, he calls them heart walls. And he writes this: scientists who have measured the magnetic field of the heart use a device called a magnetocardiogram to find that the heart has a magnetic field that can be measured several feet away from the surface of the body. When you're feeling love or affection for another person, you're literally sending energy from your heart to the other person. But then he says, when you've experienced deep grief, hurt, or loss, have any of you experienced deep grief, hurt, or loss? He says, when we do that, you may have felt that your heart was actually going to break. You may have felt like an elephant was sitting on your chest, or that you couldn't breathe. Can you remember a time like this in your life? Perhaps you were going through a breakup or divorce. Maybe you experienced trauma as a child. Whatever it was you were experiencing in that moment, it was real. These negative feelings can be so uncomfortable, so foreign, so difficult to deal with that they often result in the formation of an energetic wall put up to protect the heart from these profoundly negative emotions. Trapped emotions are moved and arranged by the subconscious mind to surround the heart layer by layer, like the layers of an onion. This is a protective mechanism to keep the heart from being hurt or broken, which may have been a perfectly appropriate defense mechanism at the time. But there is a price to pay for having a heart wall long term. Having a heart wall can make life much more difficult. When your heart is surrounded with layers of negative emotional energies, it makes it harder to feel positive emotions and easier to feel negative emotions. Wow, that's a huge thing. And I thought I could probably relate that to just about every person I know, including myself. So these layers of unresolved negative emotions, they do things like they block the flow of love to others and from others. It makes it harder to connect.
Joel,
Yes.
just a quick question. Somebody's asking, what is the name of that last book that you wrote? There you go. Thanks.
These layers of unresolved negative emotions also block self-love. They can block you from experiencing love or intimacy. They may even cause you to sabotage relationships. They can cause physical manifestations. They can create self-doubt, fear, confusion. They can prevent us from experiencing our passions. They can prevent us from realizing our purpose. They can numb us, or they can keep us stuck. They can create limiting beliefs and blockages around things like money or success or achieving goals in life. They can create stress. They can create anxiety. They can create emotional turmoil. They can create drama. They can keep us from truly being here in the present and fully living. So this is why I'm talking about it today, because it's up for me. And if it's up for me, it's probably up for you. It's part of our self-care. It's a way to release these block emotions that are trapped inside of us, because as much as we wish and hope they would just disappear, they require us to deal with them. It's our responsibility and it's our journey. So when we do work through these trapped emotions in our body, it allows us to give and receive more love. It allows us to give ourselves more love. It allows us to connect with others on a deeper level, to live with less doubt and more fear, to get in touch with our passions and our purpose in life, to open us up to go beyond limitations in every area of our life. When we release these trapped emotions, it helps us to release the stress and anxiety and drama in our life, to be more in touch with our emotions, because we'll be able to feel them instantly and then release them. It will allow us to free our body of emotional toxins from the past and from the present, and be more in the now, and to allow more joy and happiness in. In short, it will allow us to feel more alive. So I started getting all this messaging and I got it. Suddenly I was noticing all of this information about trapped emotions in the body. And in a sense, it felt like my body was now saying, good job dealing with that health challenge, but you're not done with me. You can't just go right back the way things were. You must include me always as your ally, as your teacher, and as your friend. My body was saying it's time to go deeper. Let's heal down at the deepest layers. Let's ground ourselves more deeply. You know that metaphor of the deeper the roots, the taller the tree? It's the same with our life. By grounding ourselves, by growing deeper, we can actually grow higher. So this short talk is just a reminder that, and I'm going to share some of the simple and powerful self-care techniques, but it's a reminder to deal with trapped emotions and find a way to ground yourself. So very quickly, you can read these books to get more information, but just very quickly, I'm going to just tell you, the first thing you do is you notice them. In this book, what he says is ask your subconscious mind to tell you what the trapped emotions are, and it will tell you. And so when you do that, you notice them. You just notice them. Stop, resist the urge to push them away. Next, don't try to solve them. If we could have solved these trapped emotions with our rational mind, we would have by now, right? But these are feeling based, so we process them differently than emotional problems. Instead, as you notice it, allow it, acknowledge it, say it out loud. I acknowledge this feeling within me. Then you can communicate with the trapped emotion to get clarity. You know, many of you who have listened to me over the years know I love soul letters, where you write directly. So you can write directly to a trapped emotion and get more information. Why are you here? And you can even thank it for protecting you and protecting your heart all these years. Through all of this, breathe. Every single one of these books and other books say it's important to do breath work while you do this, where you breathe into the trapped emotion. I call it stop, drop, and breathe. So you feel an emotion or you get an awareness of a trapped emotion, you stop, you drop all of your defenses. In fact, you can even drop your shoulders and breathe. And you breathe into it as much as feels comfortable. Don't push further than you're comfortable, but lean into it. And you'll notice that when you lean into it with breath, it actually begins to have less energy. And then finally go out and move your body. You can do work like yoga or Zumba or other things like that. My friend, Reverend Cheryl, who's in this call today, she was reminding me of the work of Gabrielle Roth, the 5 rhythms. And it's a movement-based practice where you literally dance in a sequence through the 5 rhythms of life. And it's very powerful. It moves it out of you. Or you can always just go to Spotify and put on a great dance playlist and dance like no one's watching. Dancing opens up our bodies in amazing ways. And the easiest way to move is just go on walks whenever you can, daily. I love sunrise walks because I like to start the day that way. But go for walks and try to go by yourself without things in your ear so that you're not distracted, just you and your body. So in closing, why is all this important? That spiritual teacher I mentioned at the start of the talk said we should only be focusing on our spirit and learn to transcend our body. But my life has revealed something different, at least for me. While we are here, and I think we're all here, right? If you're here, right? While we are here, we can become grounded in our body. We can allow our body to be a pathway to plant deep, life-giving roots. We can't just focus on the mind or the spirit or the body. Focus on just one or two of those. To be fully in oneness means to bring awareness to and be in balance with our mind, our spirit, and our body, all 3 together. This is the path. So let's affirm it together. Let's just bring our awareness to that breathing that I mentioned. Stop, drop, and breathe. Let's just stop for a moment. And let's just drop our shoulders, close our eyes, allow ourselves to just be here now. And breathe. Nothing more than just be aware of our body, be planted in our body. Feel our body. We don't have to transcend the body as if it's a bad thing, as if spirituality is higher than our body. Our body is our spirituality. It's one of the gateways to experiencing life more deeply right here and now. So with each breath we take, we allow ourselves to feel everything from the tips of our toes to our fingers, to the top of our head. That heart, that magnetic pulse from our heart emanates out from us greatly and beautifully into this world. And right now, as we breathe and feel our body, let's just take one moment to thank our body. Thank you, body, for holding our consciousness. Thank you, body, for allowing us to live our life. Thank you, body, for being there even when we're not there for you. But we are now. And now we are newly awakened in the balance of mind, body, and spirit, together as one, the one, expressing as us, in us, and through us. And with this as our truth, right here, right now, together we say, and so it is.